Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Pro-Revenge Story. I used to have a Veterans Disability Pension, VDP, for tinnitus and hearing loss. It's now merged with my state pension. It was a modest amount, and in my home country was paid annually. After moving to the UK in 2023, this pension was still paid by my government, but administered by the UK DWP, Department of Work and Pensions, who distributed it fortnightly. Earlier this year, I qualified for a disability allowance, DA, due to various health conditions. At the time, I had recently been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and was managing it through dietary changes. I received a notice to appear at the local job center for an assessment. Unfortunately, my interviewer turned out to be a real piece of work. I'm on the autism spectrum, but high functioning. This means I tend to be direct and follow rules to the letter. "You failed to declare your VDP as income," she said accusingly, shuffling through my paperwork. "Actually, I did declare it. It's listed in Section C of the form, not Section A," I replied calmly. She scowled and said, "Well, you claim to have diabetes, but you're not taking any medication. That means you're lying." "The DA claim isn't even related to diabetes," I explained. "It's for other conditions." But she wouldn't listen. In her rejection letter, she explicitly stated that I couldn't have diabetes because I wasn't taking medication. She also declared they would stop administering my VDP. I immediately sent the letter to my High Commission, who responded, "Don't worry about this, we'll handle it directly." My doctor was furious when I showed her the letter. "Who does she think she is, making medical determinations?" she fumed, and filed a formal complaint with the DWP questioning the interviewer's medical credentials. A few weeks later, I received another interview request for 1 p.m. I replied that I had a medical appointment that morning and might be slightly delayed. "If you're not here exactly at 1 p.m., your claim will be automatically denied," came her terse response. "I'll do my best to arrive on time, but please understand I might be a few minutes late," I wrote back. After my morning appointment, I rushed home, changed, and arrived at the job center precisely at 1 p.m. To my dismay, I discovered she had scheduled the interview in a first-floor room instead of the ground floor. There was no elevator. While struggling up the stairs, a man in an expensive suit noticed my difficulty. "Why are you heading upstairs?" he asked, helping me. "Got an interview," I wheezed. The interviewer chose this room. When I finally made it to the room, she smirked. "You're late. Unless you have an excellent explanation, your claim is denied." "Well," I said, catching my breath, "it's been quite a morning. As I mentioned, I had an appointment." "Tell me exactly what this appointment involved," she demanded. "Sure. I arrived, stripped down, and had 2 young medical professionals apply lubricant to my private areas. Then they had me lie on my side while one of them performed a digital rectal examination." "How dare you use such vulgar language? Your case is closed," she spluttered. The suited man, who had quietly followed me in, spoke up. "You did ask him to describe his appointment in detail." Turning to me, he asked, "How did your prostate exam turn out?" "Need more tests," I sighed. "Was that why you were late?" "No, actually. She deliberately put me on this floor knowing I have respiratory problems and can't handle stairs. I suspect she wanted to claim I was faking since I managed to climb up here." "I believe you're right," he said grimly. Addressing her, he stated firmly, "You will approve his DA claim immediately. I personally witnessed his difficulty with the stairs. You and your supervisor will meet me in my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp to explain your actions. Lateness will result in immediate termination." She went pale. "Yes, sir." Later I learned he was the regional director, sent to investigate numerous complaints about that job center. Apparently, when a high commissioner complains about breaching international agreements, it creates quite a stir at the DWP. Who knew? The next one is an entitled people story. My story begins pretty simply. I bought a modest house in a quiet suburb about 3 years ago. Nothing fancy, just a small 3-bedroom with a decent backyard where I could relax after work. The neighborhood seemed nice enough, mostly families, a few retirees, and everyone generally kept to themselves. That all changed when Dave moved in next door about a year and a half ago. Dave was in his late 40s, always dressed like he was heading to a business meeting and had this permanent scowl etched on his face. From day one, I could tell he wasn't thrilled about living next to me. At first, I tried to be friendly, waved when I saw him, even brought over a bottle of wine as a welcome gift. He took the wine without a thank you and closed the door in my face. Okay then, I remember thinking, not everyone has to be friends. For the first few months, we existed in a state of mutual avoidance. I'd see him pull into his driveway in his shiny BMW, and he'd pretend not to notice me working in my garden. Fine by me. Then came Memorial Day weekend last year. I invited a few friends over for a barbecue. Nothing crazy, just 6 people total. I'd recently gotten into grilling fish after watching some cooking videos online, and I was excited to try out a new recipe for grilled sea bass with herbs and lemon. Everything was going great. The weather was perfect, my friends were enjoying themselves, and the fish was cooking beautifully on the grill. Then I heard the sound of a sliding door opening forcefully. "What the hell is that smell?" Dave shouted from his deck, which was about 30 feet from my grill. I looked up, surprised. "Just grilling some fish. Would you like to join us?" "There's plenty." His face turned an alarming shade of red. "Are you serious? That stench is infiltrating my entire house. I had to close all my windows." "I'm sorry about that," I said, genuinely not wanting to cause problems. "The fish will be done in about 10 minutes. "This is completely unacceptable," he continued, now walking toward our shared property line. "You can't just pollute the neighborhood with that disgusting smell. I'm trying to enjoy my holiday weekend too, you know." My friends were all looking uncomfortable, and I was starting to get annoyed. "Look, Dave, I'm cooking in my own backyard. The smell will dissipate soon. This is exactly the kind of inconsiderate behavior I'd expect from someone like you," he spat. "Someone like me?" I asked, my hackles rising. "People who don't understand proper neighborhood etiquette. Fish smells travel. Everyone knows you don't grill fish in a residential area." I took a deep breath. "Well, I'm almost done here. Let's both try to enjoy the rest of our holiday." "This isn't over," he said, before storming back to his house. I tried to salvage the mood of my gathering, but Dave's outburst had cast a shadow over the whole event. My friends left earlier than planned, and I spent the evening feeling frustrated and confused. Was grilling fish really such a horrible offense? 3 days later, I found out exactly how not over it was when I received a certified letter informing me that I was being sued in small claims court by David R. Harrison, Dave's full name, apparently, for nuisance, willful infliction of distress, and property devaluation. I actually laughed when I first read it, thinking it had to be some kind of joke. But the court date listed was very real and the claims were detailed. Dave was suing me for $7,500, claiming that the noxious odors from my grill had caused him extreme distress, forced him to cancel his own Memorial Day gathering, and somehow devalued his property. I couldn't believe it. Who sues their neighbor over grilling fish once? I called a lawyer friend, Lisa, who agreed to look over the lawsuit for me. She called me back the next day, clearly trying not to laugh. "This is ridiculous," she said, "but unfortunately you do need to take it seriously because it's a real lawsuit, however absurd." "So what do I do?" I asked. "Show up to court, bring evidence that you were having a normal, reasonable barbecue, and let the judge sort it out. Also document everything from now on with this neighbor. I have a feeling this isn't going to be the end of it." She was right. Over the next 6 weeks leading up to the court date, Dave escalated his campaign against me. He installed bright security lights pointed directly at my bedroom window. He started mowing his lawn at 7 a.m. on Saturdays. He even called the city to report suspicious activity when I had my sister stay over for a weekend. I documented everything as Lisa suggested, taking photos and keeping a detailed log of every interaction. I also spoke with other neighbors who were mostly bemused by the whole situation. Several offered to come to court as witnesses to testify that the fish smell wasn't nearly as apocalyptic as Dave claimed. The court date finally arrived. I took the day off work and showed up early, dressed in my most respectable outfit. Dave arrived in a full suit with a leather briefcase, looking like he was arguing a case before the Supreme Court instead of small claims court. When our case was called, Dave went first. He had prepared what seemed like a 20-minute speech about how my irresponsible cooking choices had severely impacted his quality of life and potentially affected his property value. He even brought printed articles about fish odors and their lingering effects. The judge, an older woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, listened patiently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Dave finished his presentation, she turned to me. "And what do you have to say about these allegations?" I kept it simple. "Your Honor, I had a small gathering at my home on Memorial Day. I grilled fish once in the middle of the afternoon on my own property. The cooking lasted less than 30 minutes. There were no noise complaints, no ordinance violations, and no other neighbors had any issues with it. I presented my evidence, photos of the small gathering, statements from 3 neighbors confirming that while they could smell the fish, it wasn't excessive or offensive, and proof that I had tried to be reasonable with Dave from the beginning. Furthermore, I added, since this incident, Mr. Harrison has engaged in what appears to be retaliatory behavior. I showed the judge my documentation of the security lights, early morning lawn mowing, and false reports to the city. The judge asked a few questions, then sat back in her chair. She looked at Dave. "Mr. Harrison, let me make sure I understand. You're suing your neighbor for cooking fish on his grill once during a holiday weekend in the middle of the day." Dave started to launch into another speech about property values and neighborhood standards, but the judge cut him off. "Mr. Harrison, cooking food on one's own property, even fish, is a normal legal activity. There's no city ordinance against it. There's no homeowners association that prohibits it. Your neighbor was engaging in a perfectly reasonable use of his property." Dave tried to interrupt again, but the judge raised her hand. "I'm not finished. Based on the evidence presented, it appears that you have engaged in a pattern of harassment following this incident. The security lights pointed at your neighbor's bedroom, the early morning noise, the false reports to authorities. These are much closer to actual nuisance behaviors than anything your neighbor has done." She dismissed Dave's case and warned him that if he continued his retaliatory behavior, he could find himself back in court, but as a defendant rather than a plaintiff. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as we left the courtroom. Dave stormed out without looking at me, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. But the story doesn't end there. 2 weeks after the court case, I received another certified letter, this time notifying me that Dave was appealing the decision to a higher court and now seeking $15,000 in damages. I called Lisa immediately. "He's what?" she exclaimed. "This is getting absurd. He has no grounds for appeal on a simple small claims judgment like this." "What do I do now?" I asked, the stress creeping back into my voice. "This time, you don't just defend yourself. We countersue for harassment and legal fees." And that's exactly what we did. Lisa helped me file a countersuit against Dave for harassment, legal expenses, and emotional distress. We documented every single incident of his retaliatory behavior and how it had affected my ability to enjoy my own home. When the appeal date came, we were ready. The new judge reviewed both the original case and our countersuit. This time, David hired an actual attorney who looked increasingly uncomfortable as the hearing progressed. The judge not only upheld the original dismissal of Dave's claim, but ruled in favor of my countersuit. Dave was ordered to pay my legal fees, which by now were substantial, and $5,000 in damages for harassment. The judge also issued a cease and desist order, requiring Dave to stop his retaliatory behavior immediately. The look on Dave's face when the judgment was read is something I'll never forget. A mixture of shock, anger, and finally, defeat. Within 3 months, Dave's house was on the market. I heard from another neighbor that he told his real estate agent he was moving because the neighborhood had gone downhill. The new family that moved in couldn't be nicer. They even invited me to their housewarming party. And yes, I still grill fish in my backyard. The new neighbors don't mind at all. In fact, they've asked me for the recipe. The whole experience taught me something important. Standing up for yourself against unreasonable people isn't just about principle, it's necessary. If I had given in to Dave's initial demands, who knows what else he would have tried to control. Sometimes in life, you have to fight for your right to grill fish. As ridiculous as that sounds, it's true, and I'm glad I did. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Back in the early 2000s, I was a concrete mixer driver. Mostly I drove a front mixer, which means the high end of the barrel and the opening is in the front, because the driver has so much control over the concrete pouring operation. While I pour, I can start, stop, control the flow. I sit rather high so I can better see the job site. I can also easily move the truck while pouring, and I can hydraulically move the chute left, right, up/down, so they are more desired. Mostly because the crew receiving the load can use less people than with a cheaper rear truck. Keep in mind the concrete load is batched in the plant and loaded in the truck straight away for delivery. As the ingredients start to harden, the mix heats up. The longer the mix is in the truck, the more the concrete heats up and starts to set. 2 ways to slow this down is to slow the rotation to the slowest speed, reducing friction, and add water to cool the load. Typically, you want to pour the load within an hour of being batched. One day I poured a job and ended up with about 4 cubic yards of concrete left over. Normally, I would take this back to the yard and pour it in large block forms to make large 1 cubic yard interlocking blocks to be sold for retaining walls. However, this day, there was a contractor close by where I was that needed a little more concrete to finish a basement floor in a new construction home. Great, thinks dispatch. We have a truck not too far away from you with extra concrete that we will sell you at a discount. Contractor agrees because it saves him money, and he does not have to wait. So, I head there. Once on site, I set up really quick, check my load, and add water as needed to get a good flow. I pour for a little bit and the contractor asks for more water. Here's the thing. My load is over 2 hours old right now, and it is heating up fast. It needs more water, more often, to remain fluid. The water evaporates out quickly and the concrete gets thicker. Each of our trucks carry 300 gallons of water used for the concrete and cleaning the truck when done. Under the water tank, there is a main shut-off valve. Below that is a pipe that runs to the cab, with another valve then up to the barrel to water the load. 2 more valves for the upper and lower water hoses and 1 more for a drain to the ground. All these, except for the barrel valve, are located outside the truck behind the cab. The contractor gets angry that I have to stop often to add water. Remember, the load is old by concrete standards. As a concrete contractor, he should know that. He comes up to me and says, "Open the barrel valve and add water." Nowhere near that nice. Then he says, "Do not touch that valve again. Leave it open, and I will control the water." Again, nowhere near that nice. Now mix that up and start pouring. What he is doing is shutting off the main valve from the outside when he decides there is enough water. Malicious compliance. He comes out 2 more times and adds water. Finally, as they get close to being done, some of the extra guys on the crew come up, open the main valve, grab my hose, and start washing their tools. Because they open the main valve, they are also adding water to the barrel. Now, I am not to touch the barrel valve, so I don't say a word. I don't touch the valve. The barrel line dumps 1 gallon of water per second. Just over a minute later, about 70 gallons of water rush down the chute and in the basement. The contractor comes out of the basement screaming, comes up to me and he says, "What is your problem?" I said, "I don't have a problem." "The problem is you thought you could do my job and yours and you can't. Now you have a problem." As I finished cleaning the truck, he was calling every number for my company to complain. When I got back to the yard, the plant manager wanted to know what happened. After I explained the situation, I found out the company as a whole has had an issue with this contractor. I never heard anything about it, nor did I ever see that contractor again. The next one is an entitled people story. A couple days ago, I told my eldest brother Mark, and by proxy also his wife Julie, to stick it where the sun don't shine after Mark went on a text storm about my adopted daughter. For background, my daughter Vivi may not be biologically mine, but she is my daughter. I've known her since her first year of life. I've been her mom since. I married her father when she was too small to even really remember and legally adopted her. She's only always ever called me Mama. When my husband passed away, it became me and her against the world. The dynamic duo. Recently, Vivi didn't start a fight, but finished it with a bully she'd endure for much longer than she should have had to. The whole saga is on my account if you want all those details, but the short is she ended up defending herself from him physically. He's now expelled. My daughter was not punished at home. In fact, I told her good job on defending herself. That's where my butt-crack-brained brother got on his bull crap. He never liked my late husband, unless our daughter, and always had something rude to say about them. But this sent him into a huge tirade on how Vivi will grow up to be a criminal, that I'm encouraging violence, and the next time she gets her feelings hurt, she will think it's okay to start a fight. Julie said she is concerned because Singe parent households produce angry and bottled-up children who are far more likely to end up in jail. I told them I never asked for their opinions, and the rest of my siblings agreed with me. But my brother wasn't done. He texted me vile things about my daughter, and his stepson sent video and screenshots of my brother calling her a stray kitten, his apparent favorite insult, and saying that she is not my child, and so on. I uninvited him to my 4th of July BBQ, told him he is not to talk to or even look at my child until he fixes his attitude, and he just doubled down. Let me be clear. He is the eldest, but he is adopted too. He is biologically my cousin. 2 of his 4 kids are stepchildren. Julie is a widow. His hypocrisy is breathtaking. So I had my daughter send over all the evidence she had and delete it off her phone, and I took all my screenshots and the like and sent it to my mom. I snitched so hard. I don't have time for this bullcrap. Don't know what she said to him, but she called me back that night a few hours later and told me to let her know if he decides to show his whole ass again. She talked to Vivi on speaker while I finished making us some treats before bed and told her that she loves her very much, that Uncle Mark is being a jerk, and if he or Aunt Julie try to bother Vivi or I again, to tell her. It rained like crazy on the 4th, so my BBQ only had a handful of folks who lived near me from the family and some friends. Vivi was happy, kicking her other uncles' asses at Mario Kart, and all the adults are drinking and dancing or watching the rain on my porch when who walks in? Mark, Julie, their 4 kids. Julie strolls right up to me with a whole-ass chicken and asks where she can put it down. I was like, sorry, what? I asked her what she was doing here and why they were there. Apparently, my dear old bro didn't tell her about our most recent spat and the invitation being revoked. She looked truly shocked. I'm livid by this point, but the kids are playing video games and Vivi looks happy. She's pointedly ignoring my brother, who said hello to her, and when he doesn't get an answer, he throws his hands up and says, "So much for manners." My other brother, Zeke, just goes UO to him and starts to talk to him quietly. I could hear Mark arguing, but Zeke just kept his hand on his shoulder. I looked at Julie, who looked like she was in panic/fix-it mode. I told her, "Listen, if they want to leave the kids here for a couple hours, that's fine, but my brother is not welcome in my home, so she will have to be Tharwan to pick them up." She thanked me and went to my brother, who now had both our other brothers talking to him. They all walk him out. I heard him say, "Kids, let's go," and his wife said, kids, I'll be back by 3. Be good," and pulled him out. I sent him a text reminding him not to speak to my child, and he is not welcome in my home until he apologizes for all the verbal abuse towards Vivi and fixes his attitude about her. My stepdad and mom arrived not long after, and when he was told what happened, Dad started to take his pipe to the porch and sat right next to the front door. Mom arranged it with Julie that she will take the kids home when she leaves, and we managed to have a good time. Today is Sunday. My mom had asked we all go this week, so we did. She did warn me Mark might be there. I warned Vivi. She said it was fine. I told Mom it's fine, but Mark needs to give Vivi a wide berth. And I told Mark via text that he is to stay away from my child. He replied, "I don't need reminders." Okay then. Service went fine. I'm not much of a church person, but Vivi had a solo and sang beautifully, so this mama is happy. There was food happening in the event hall, and Vivi asks if she can stay a while and chat with her friends. Sure, I say. Have fun. All was well for about 45 minutes. I was sitting with stepdad and one of my brothers when Mark comes over to say his byes. Everyone gets a hug but me. Fine by me. He says Kitty did a good job up there. And I said, "Who?" And I could see that it was in that moment he knew he ducked up. I don't know if he meant to say Kitty or not, and I don't rightly care. I said, "Who?" again, and he muttered Vivica, and I nodded and told him that is her name. Same name she's had the whole time. Julie is trying to get him to leave, and he is almost leaving when Vivi and her friends come up. She told me later she saw her uncle come up to us and not hug me, and that made her mad, so she came up to be near for support with her friends. I did tell her that I'm grown and don't need her to come to my defense, that it's my job to protect her, not the other way around, and her response? Just a nod. Kids. Mark complimented Vivi and she gave a very plain thanks, then asked if I was ready to go. I said sure if she is. Mark sent me a short text telling me I embarrassed him and our whole family with my show I put on. He's upset now because we don't need to make our issues everyone's business at church, and that I don't even go to church, so why invade his safe spaces? He called me immature and that I need to stay away from his kids so I don't teach them such poor manners. I haven't even responded. Vivi is getting dressed and we are going to my mom's for lunch. Stepdad said Mark outright refused to come when he confirmed I would be there. Mark has told our parents if I am somewhere, he won't be there. My reply? Does he promise? I told my dad, if he wants to be this way, we can just go full NC. I don't have patience for this nonsense, and that also meant I am not helping out next time he needs anything. I'm out. Dad got quiet and said he gets it, but to remember that Mark's kids did nothing. He's okay if I want to stick it to Mark, but as I don't friendly fire on Thar children. I told him we'll talk when we get there. He's going to want to bring up our family vacation, of which I took care of the hotel and passes for because my job is within that industry. I'm usually the go-to for these things. We are supposed to go for the first week of August. We try to do one vacation as a big extended family per year. We'll see how this ducking goes. Anyway, thank you for watching.